haere mai ki tēnei hui o te kaunihira arohi o te mātaua Māui mō tēnei marama o Pautu Te Rangi. Me hoatu te raka ki a koe Thompson. Can you please start us with a karakia? Kia ora.
Ka pai kia ora tātou. Tātou koe hui mai nei I rungi I tēnei ahiahi mō tēnei huinga o tātou. I tēnei wā, I mua I te karakia, ka tuku atu au I ngā whakaaro ki ngā hautu, ngā haumi o te wao tapu nui nā tāne, rā atu ana ko ngā mate o te rā o te wiki o te marama o te tau. Tētahi o era, kua tiraha mai rā, takoto ia ki tōna kohanga reo, rā ko te pāpā Jerry Edwards. No reira, Jerry, te pāpā, tiraha mai rā koe I roto I ngā manaakitanga o te atua e whakapuno atu rā koe. Me nā manaakitanga o tō iwi, o tō hapo, o karanga maha katoa, tiraha mai rā o ki tonu mai. Ka huri atu au ki a tātou te hunga ora e pīkau tia nei I ngā wawata o rātou, waru peke hi atu ki tua o te arai. Tika tonu rā te kōrero, me karakia tātou, hei whakawātia nei I ngā kōrero kei muia tātou. Whai mai au, so follow me, tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tāiki e.
Tēnā koe Councillor Hokianga. Tēnā koe Charlie, who's online with us. Kia ora he tuku mihi aroha ki a koe mo tō te hinga o tō whanaunga I tēnei wā. Tēnā koe Charlie.
Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora. We have apologies from Charles, Councillor Lambert, and also from Councillor Van Beek.
Yes, Charles Theodore.
I mean, I'm sorry if you leave early. Councillor Van Beek.
Me too, Chair, 2:30.
2:30, early leave. Sorry, and Mike Paku will be late in leaving early. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for those apologies? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Foley, all those who agree say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Housekeeping, since we've got a full whare, so no mai haere mai everyone who's joined us today. We do have a full agenda item, and I'm looking for our house rules. Right, housekeeping. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In the event of an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. If the shaking is long or strong, when shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. In the event of evacuation, if an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exits and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton and Voltaire Street. Emergency exits are clearly signposted, and the wharepaku are located down the hallway just to the right. Moving on, conflict of interest declarations in any of today's items. Councillor Harding.
Lord Chair, just a clarification of a lack of interest. In relation to item 7, covers water science charges.
Yes.
But it only covers that, and as an irrigator and as a water science charge payer, on the face of things, I would be conflicted. I don't pay, and I'm not linked to a low flow, so I'm able to fully participate.
Thank you. So you're very comfortable in participating. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Thank you. Are there any other conflict of interest items anyone should be declaring? No. Thank you. We move on to the minutes from the 26th of February meeting. If we have all read those, yes. Can I please have a mover, Councillor Harding, and a seconder? Councillor Pukeanga, thank you. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Fantastic. There are no speakers in the public forum today, but I do call for minor items not on the agenda to be raised later on in the meeting. There are none. Fantastic. Are there any notices? No notices. Okay, let's get kicking. We go to our first decision item, which is the annual plan 25-26 consultation. Now please welcome up Desiree and Chris. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
And hand it over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, councillors, adoption of an annual plan to go out to consultation is always a significant part of the calendar year for councils. As you know, this year council has been through an extensive process of looking at how it might reduce the cost of services to ratepayers, and I'm sure the team here will take you through some of those reductions that you have made. But if I could just say thank you for your guidance as you have taken the organisation through this process and essentially removed about 10% of the cost of the projected rate increase. So my appreciation for your governance role in that process. All being well and you would choose to adopt to go to consultation, the consultation process begins as of Monday next week.
Very good.
I'll just hand over to the team for a brief summary.
Thank you.
Okay, kia ora, councillors. So, in our paper, we have talked about the work that has been done, and as Nick has said, about our initial starting point of an 18.3% rates increase, which was as described in the 3-year plan for year 2, and how we have managed to get that down to a 9.9%. I draw your attention to the tables that are around page 22, which talked about by group of activities where those increases in year 2 of the LTP or the 3-year plan had been going to incur. So that was a lot of additional costs going back into integrated catchment management and the biodiversity and environmental information and science areas, and increases in our transport program based on our original estimations of how the land transport plan would, our bus services and that would go over the 3 years. We have then brought that back down through a number of areas, including where Waka Kotahi funding for public transport was a lot less than what we had expected, so we've been able to bring some rates changes down from that, and also by looking through our integrated catchment management, biodiversity and biosecurity, which are all mentioned in the consultation document. And that brings us down to a 9.9% rates increase through there. In terms of the consultation document, the key things that we are looking to consult on there for the Mangaro Stream work, flood resilience work that's happening there. As that is a new targeted rate, we need to consult on that. However, that is a pass-through rate for Hastings District Council, who will be doing all of the work, so we are effectively collecting that on their behalf. It is one of the points I will raise in terms of our 9.9% rates increase. That is excluding the work on the Mangaro Stream, which will only affect half of or some of the Hastings District ratepayers that reside in District Rating Area 1 for them. We're also consulting around changes to the Upper Tuki flood control scheme and the public transport rates, where following the revenue and financing review we had a couple of years ago, we have managed to improve the thinking from that point in time and made a few changes to those rates, as has been discussed and worked through with councillors over the last 6 months into there. We also have a few changes around our revenue and financing policy and remissions policies, just tidying those up. and some work on the regional land transport plan. Anything else you would like to add?
Kia ora, councillors. I'll just reiterate that this is the culmination of the 9 workshops that we had. You have seen this in a Word version before. So this is the first time you will see it, all of it in a design version. We had tried to incorporate your feedback to date. Hopefully you can see that in the content. Just wanted to thank the comms team for the design work, and also the finance team for, I think, the level of grading information that we are now providing in terms of options is as sophisticated as we've ever had. So hopefully you can see that improvement over time from when we did the original revenue and financing policy. We're now showing average rates, distribution of rates, and sample rates under 2 options. That is, I think, impressive. So open to questions.
Thank you, Desiree and Chris. How long do we have if there are any last minute points of feedback into the consultation document?
We really, at this stage, would like only showstoppers, but because we are doing a light touch consultation, we aren't getting this printed out house, so we're doing it internally. We can make some small changes.
Okay, I think that's quite helpful, as some councillors would like to make some small changes, which I'm happy to collect, and then feedback to the team.
Okay. We really would need those like imminently, like today, if possible.
Well, maybe we can meet afterwards and start going through them. Okay, are there questions or clarifications from the paper? Councillor Robley.
It's a very simple one, thank you, Chair. Desi, the rates calculator, what will that be calculating? The preferred?
That's right, yeah. Only shows the preferred option.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I do have a range of minor wording changes that I'd like to sit down with the team at the end of the day and go through. I'll go through those in my comments, but just in terms of questions right now, I just want everyone to sort of understand them a little bit. It's a great piece of work, by the way. It's a fantastic document, and I guess it reflects where we got to last year and having the award for the best consultation document. So that's a good baseline to work from. I just want to make sure I understand what's happening with biodiversity. At one stage, I thought we were looking at the prospect of there being no new sites protected. It now says that there would be 4 sites protected. And I understand that's because we've introduced some carbon credits and a small amount of additional rates funding. What would the number of sites protected have been if we'd stuck with the proposed biodiversity funding in the long-term plan?
I'll ask Richard to come forward.
Richard.
Kia ora koutou, call Richard Wakeland, toko ingoa. Just in response to the question, and the levels of service measures were for new sites, and this has been achieved and I guess where the pressure has come on is the level of maintenance that is applied to existing sites. So it's looking at maintaining the sites that have already been established, and these are going to be prioritised with focus on sites with serious threats to ecological integrity, e.g. old man's beard, invasions, feral deer incursions. So whilst there is some pressure on us actually meeting those 4 sites with a reduced, we're using I guess an agile approach to the budget in terms of prioritising maintenance of existing sites and then looking about how we can continue to actually add new sites. So it's,
in short, we're sticking with the same number of new sites as we were planning to do.
so
Yes?
yes.
Right. And that might mean we do a little bit
less maintenance in some of the existing sites, but you stay with the priority
So
of deer fencing, for example?
Absolutely, in terms of the areas that are most concerned, which is at this stage the likes of old man's beard invasions and the feral deer, it's how we actually use some agility around that maintenance. And there might be some sites that may not necessarily need to be maintained every year, and we can actually just spread that out.
So what does the sentence saying, decisions on which sites to protect and where maintenance activities will be increasingly influenced by cost rather than ecological impact, what does that mean?
So if there is a high cost site, then we might decide that there is the ability to do multiple smaller sites and achieve more on a kind of a broader protection that's a little bit easier than actually taking on some of those more challenging sites that have a high cost and a narrow level of protection. So you've got sites that cost a lot to maintain because of either their location or the nature of the work that needs to be undertaken, and they may actually be avoided as opposed to doing a larger number of small sites that have a bigger impact on an area basis.
So the real change in level of service, and that's my final question, is really on the targeted catchment work fund rather than the PEP or whatever they're called. Thank you, Chair. I'll have some comments later.
Okay, Councillor Curtin.
Oh,
Or Councillor Richard, is it okay?
Kia ora. Thank you, through you, Chair. Richard, similar question around the biodiversity. It's not completely clear. It talks about the $50,000 that we are currently giving Biodiversity Hawke's Bay, which they, on our behalf, give to community groups. That is staying within the budget,
correct.
exactly. And I just want to make that explicit because I have had a question as to why we would be cutting our internal budget, but also giving out money to external. And I just want to say I really appreciate the comments around that, because the growing our community groups to continue that biodiversity work is, as I understand it, good, you're nodding, so important, because the more work that starts happening out there in self-funding, we're growing our reach in our biodiversity work. Exactly. Good. We're all agreeing.
It also enables the leverage of, with Biodiversity Hawke's Bay, it actually connecting into a wider leverage as well. So it's technically allowing the $50,000 in that context to go broader and brings in that community involvement.
Exactly. And as I understand it, just confirming also, Biodiversity Hawke's Bay are funded now for 25-26 also for their operational work, although that's now not coming through our budget.
That's correct.
Correct. Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Curtin.
Can I just, are you going to go back to Richard? Sorry.
Are we, okay, let's do all the Richard questions and then we'll end with Councillor Curtin.
Just a very quick clarification. Richard, when you were referring to the choice of sites or how much maintenance is done on those sites, you're referring to the new sites, not the ones we're already protecting. Is that correct?
So the choice of protection of existing sites will be determined by their degree of complexity, right? So in terms of maintaining them, so if you have a site that is very expensive to maintain, it may not necessarily be a large geographic area, but just the complexity of access and the location of it might mean that it has less priority over multiple sites that have a lower cost of being able to maintain. So we could do a wider area on a per hectare basis of choosing some more accessible sites.
So can I just flesh that out a bit more? That so if we had a complex, expensive site already under protection, you would reduce the maintenance in there but start a new?
No. This is around the prioritisation of maintenance.
Right.
Because as we are growing our sites, as we bring on more sites, the cost of maintaining them goes up. Okay. And so in order to stabilise our expenditure in this area, we're going to have to do some prioritisation around those growths. So the more you add to it, the more it's going to cost to maintain.
Okay, are we still on biodiversity? No. Biodiversity? No. Biodiversity? No.
No.
Great answer. Okay, so councillor Curtin was first, thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just like echo the thoughts of my colleagues, very, very clear consultation document, and particularly page 8 and 9, the so-called waterfall graphic. Well done to whoever reimagined that and brought it to us. I just want to go to it, and I'm not sure whether it's a showstopper or not, Desiree. If I can go to, if you like, the left hand, the 8.7 million cost increases budgeted, and take you to the 1.8 million interest costs for Niue flood resilience, and then if we can just dive over to the red square, and we've described a $500,000 increase in all other changes, including election costs, etc. I just wondered, I had assumed that the additional Niue costs were greater than the 1.8 million, and in particular the sedum cost. And I just wonder whether it's worth teasing out the sedum cost and or any other Niue costs, and identifying that is in the 2.5 million. Well, perhaps I'll start again. The question around Niue costs, are they greater than 1.8 million?
Yes, included in that 500,000 is about 200,000 of additional Niue-related costs in terms of the insurance. So effectively, the 1.8 that we had in our 3-year plan has gone up to $2 million for this year, mainly because of the delay in the work that happened. So we're expecting to see quite a bit more costs coming through this year. So when we first imagined the schemes, we had a plan of where that spend would happen. And there's more spend actually happening in the 25-26 year, which will push up the interest costs in that year.
So should the 2.5 million be greater? Should it be a bigger number?
No, so the 2.5, within the 500,000, there's 200,000 of that relates to additional Niue costs, which add to the 1.8 million in the first column.
But that's not the insurance, that's financing costs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I just wondered, Desiree can say yay or nay to this, is in fact we identify those costs in that column, so we extract out that cost, and so it's very clear that they're a recovery cost as opposed to anything else. I think the public would understand that better if there was an identifiable cyclone recovery cost identified specifically. Is that possible?
So just so I'm clear, so you want us to unbundle the 500, 300 x 200?
Whatever that split is.
I think we can do that.
Can you? And potentially adding into it if there's an extra sedum cost, which I thought was quite significant, putting that in that additional recovery cost as well. Does that make sense? No?
It does. It sounds simple.
It sounds simple. It's just that all of these numbers start getting quite small in there.
Sure, I appreciate that. But I mean, we've sort of, I don't know if the threshold is the 300k, but if there's a 300k component for cyclone recovery, I'd suggest that we identify it specifically.
We could look at it. So your request is to isolate Niue,
stroke,
Austin.
sedum, or cyclone recovery costs.
Thank you, councillor Curtin. Those your questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. I will go councillor McIntosh, then councillor Harding.
Actually, I also wanted to echo those thoughts on pages 8 and 9. I thought they were great. It's a really good way of explaining that, and it's good having it early on in the document too, so well done with that. Under the first column, the 8.7 million column, the 3.6 million part of that refers to zero rate increase in 2021. So am I right? That was the COVID-related zero rate increase? So look, I just think it'd be quite good to put COVID in there because that gives it context as to why it was zero rated.
So the 3.6 million relates to COVID and the 2021 long-term plan where we deferred the rate increase.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and you said that in there. I just felt it would be, as far as the zero rate component of it is concerned, that was COVID-related.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. The risk of stuck records here, page 8, that waterfall is really good. I mean, it's easy to understand, but it's packed full of information, so that's credit to the team. I just want to talk about Mangaro streams. So if we go to page 16, just thinking ahead to considering the different options. So if we go out to ratepayers, and presumably the Havelock, the affected ratepayers, are the ones who are going to be interested in this and respond. We're just simply giving them a choice between pay over 3 years, pay more now, or pay 20 years. And the general rationale for our preferred one is simply that there's lower interest costs and we get it out of the way. When we come to deliberations, uppermost in my mind is going to be what comes next, and the importance of clearing the books relatively quickly for other issues that we know we're going to have to grapple with. And so that's going to, but nowhere, there's no wording that reflects that this is not the end of things. And I wouldn't want, and I think there's some value in signalling, for example, our flood resilience. It's likely that the community is going to be presented with choices that are going to come with costs. And so for the ratepayers of Hastings, it actually makes a lot of sense to clear this quickly, even though on the face of things, they're paying over 3 years for an intergenerational asset in terms of improvement in that flood resilience. So rationally, it'd be easy to default back to, oh, well, it's an intergenerational asset, so let's spread it over 20 years rather than having an additional hit. But I think that is a mistake to just look at it like that. So just as a couple of words, just to reflect that the value in getting this done, because we know this is not the end of costs around flood resilience. Just a couple of words around that.
Nice.
And just to round out, if we go back to the waterfall, there is, and on the right-hand side, and it's challenging to reflect that overall we've got a 9.9% increase down from 18.3, but there is an additional cost, and we've got it in here as 0.9 million for those subset of Hastings ratepayers. And that is in addition to the 9.9%. The graphics, just a little bit unclear. If you just took parts of it, you might infer that the 0.9 million is actually a subset of the 4.7. It's not. I just ask if we could just have a look at the words just to make it absolutely clear, not misleading, that it is an additional cost. And it's just the constraints of the pictogram, if you like, that people, once over lightly, could get it wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ollie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the document, but specifically more the work that's got to get to this point. There's been an immense amount of work across the organisation, so thank you for that. And I just wanted to, referring to the changes in the Upper Tuki scheme, if you look at the sample rates in isolation, pages 26, 27, or it might be just 26, in isolation, I think they don't do us any favours. They're probably quite confusing in terms of, in reality, what's happening across the board, because you're just looking at one farm, one commercial, one residential. You've attempted to kind of address that on page 20, I think, with the breakdown of some different properties and the specific Uptuki rate, but there's no residential in there.
Right,
Hey, do you want me to start again?
yeah, just your page numbers, I think, are different than that. Like,
Oh,
The other pages.
oh, sorry, I'm just going off the Stella. Page 50, might be 51, 52.
Yep,
Okay, sample of urban rates. You've got Central Hawke's Bay in a $98 increase, 27% increase. So in isolation, I think that's not helpful. And then likewise with the farm, it's was negative 19.5 and commercial negative 24. So if you go to page 39, or 38, sorry, I think that's an attempt to show the bigger range across the, but there's no residential there. No, sorry, not in Central Hawke's Bay at least.
we might get Vanessa up here. So our sample rates, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, finance team, are the same set always. So,
You get my point though, like,
yeah,
that's fine.
but it should be this one, I think, on
Because whether
page
we could-
38, we should have a bigger mix, maybe.
Particularly residential, because that's the biggest subset of the population, and they're just going to look at that 27 and say, well, hang on, we just got hit with 300% last year, and there were those ones affected by the Apatuki changes.
So how we chose these was very where they fall within. So we kind of went dead middle, and then we tried to go dead middle again, and it was just by luck of the draw. We can be very particular and pick someone out in particular, but we did try to go, this is a dead center sample rate, and then here's your dead center in the middle up at the higher end, here's your dead center on the lower end. We did not pick by lifestyle or anything.
Yeah.
It was solely, here's your representative of your whole span of all your rates.
So could we potentially have a look at a couple of them and go one or two above or below them to get a residential one? So swap a lifestyle for a residential and a pastoral for a residential or something like that?
Yeah, and in particular, a low, a medium, and a high residential.
Is there ones you would want removed then?
Just so there's a good mix, like a good mix of lifestyle, pastoral, commercial, and residential, really. Yeah.
I think we can have a look at that.
Still good. Thank you. If there are no further questions, points of clarification, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I just find one's a bit train spotty, but in the amendments to the revenue and financing policy, I don't know when we're talking about that, but that's presumably part of this conversation, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Part of the consultation document.
Yeah, well, on my printout of it all, because I won't go into that, but I needed to print it out, page 108 to 109, it's got a box that's suggesting some additional new targeted rate for Hastings District Council in relation to integrated catchment management. And I don't understand what that's about. I thought we were doing some clarification that part of ICM's, more benefits some parts of the communities, not others, and there's some explanation there, but there's this funny box in there, and you see what I mean? It's just a box that points to nowhere.
Is that one?
Yeah. And it seems to be nested within integrated catchment management.
I will look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? No, there are none. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for this item and the recommendations that are on the table? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Curtin, would you like to speak?
I need to reinforce what we've all said about the quality of the document. Thank you.
That's it. Councillor Curtin. Any further speakers? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, sorry. Just a few things that I just want, so people understand what I'm going to go off and talk to the team about in terms of my train spotty word amendments. But some of them are a bit more substantive than that. I don't think we can categorise the changes to the Regional Public Transport Plan as minor. I think that's misleading. They're actually pretty fundamental. The structure's staying, but the level of service is dramatically below what we consulted on previously. So I'm going to seek that the word minor goes. wherever it appears, and it also appears in our statement of proposal. So that's just one point. On the Mangaro Stream issue, for example, it says there's a tough choice to make between 3 years and 20 years. I don't think it's a tough choice. I think we should reframe that. Your choice. This is the choice we want you to make. So put it back to the community. What do you want? And it does say a lot about saving interest. I just think to do justice to all of the brouhaha that emerged last year on capital value for public transport, we need to be more clear where we talk about the fact that we're going to SURPs. And I'll show Betty where to do this, if it's permissible. It says we previously rated on capital value. We didn't. We changed it to capital value last year, and that caused significant variation in rates across and within different neighbourhoods for the same service. And so we are responding to standardise that. And just to really give why we're doing it, and I think equally for the reason we're cutting off those two areas, is because of feedback received that people in those areas weren't able to access the service. So just make it clear why we're doing it, and it'll just show better that why we've moved. I think those are the sort of nature of the changes that I wanted to make, and if I could have permission to be part of that delegation, to sit down with a pen.
Absolutely.
Take about 10 minutes, probably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I just say though, look, Nick, you said thank you to us for the guidance and everything. No, thank you to the team, actually. It's an extraordinary job that you've done, getting 18% down to 9.9%. I was really grumpy about it when I thought biodiversity was suffering in a way that I thought was unsustainable as a preeminent crisis facing humanity. But we've done a lot there to keep it at a level of service that I'm more comfortable with and manage the 9.9%. So Harry Potter to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Foley.
Thanks, Chair. Look, yeah, and just wanted to echo similar comments that, what this organisation's been through, significant LTP 12 months ago and some significant rate increases, not just last year, but for the 3-year plan. And that certainly caused a bit of stress out in our community. So just want to acknowledge the work from Nick and the team that's had to bring that down, a significant amount of work, everyone in their different departments going through budgets, and appreciate it wasn't easy for a lot of people. I just want to acknowledge again the changes we've made in the Apatoki scheme, specifically for down my area, is we're on this journey. We started this journey to try and simplify the scheme because it was pretty complicated. And unfortunately, the journey to get to that simplification has been quite a complex one, and it's going to continue to be until this annual plan's adopted, unfortunately. So I might have to thank Vanessa in advance for some bit of communications when I get some feedback from my constituents. But thankfully the calculator there is online for everyone to look at individual property level this time. So that will be appreciated. And I just think a bit more work to go down my area to but once the dust settles, then hopefully we do achieve what we set out to. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sears.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a great document too, and if you were interested, I know how hard it is for our community to really engage with it, but you could pick through and choose your pieces here, and they're written in a way that I think is really easy to access. So congratulations, Desi, and also I really appreciate partly why we've tried to keep this consultation as light as we can is because we know we have this work coming up in terms of engagement around the flood resilience and our new schemes and our broad and wide strategy for a resilient, responsive regional council in a way that interacts with the people and the environment in terms of safety, well-being and events. So I think that's great that we've included these dates at the end because, in effect, even if you didn't want to submit on any of those, there's a headline leading into what's coming. So I think you've done that really well, and appreciate how well you have interpreted what we asked for the document to represent. I had a few, again, I've got a few little typos and bits and pieces, but we're going to feed those back through the chair. They're nothing significant.
Thank you. Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, very briefly, Madam Chair, I just think it's worth reflecting on that graphic, the so-called waterfall graphic. On the left-hand side of that, the page 8, what we're dealing with, 8.7 mil, 2.5 mil in those two squares, what we're seeing is a consequence of events well outside this council's responsibility or actions. One is a very, very substantial calamity in terms of COVID, and then the other is obviously the cyclone. So those numbers reflect, and the commentary in them reflects what this council has faced over the last 5 years, an extraordinary duopoly of events that have really set this organisation back on its heels, and ultimately through to the ratepayer. That's why those numbers look so good, so large. But then we look on the left-hand side and our response to it, and I think we need to take some, if you like, heart that we have responded very substantially to the challenge. It's cold comfort to ratepayers, but at least what we've done is mitigated that as much as we can, possibly in agreement with my colleague Councillor Williams, examining where those consequences land is something that we need to reflect on a lot, because if you like, the environment is something that we must not let slide. That level of service has been adjusted, but we cannot lose focus as to where we ought to be. So I think, in fairness to where we've come from, where we've landed today is the best we could do in the circumstances.
Okay, Councillor Harding.
Elder Chair, look, I just wanted to take this opportunity to applaud our regional public transport plan and the people behind it, the long-suffering, very small team behind it. As Councillor Williams says, this is not a minor rejig, this is a major setback we've had to deal with in the regional public transport plan. Essentially completely outside the control of this organisation, which set out with reasonable expectations around funding arrangements from the Crown, which were subsequently changed. So we're operating a public transport system with both legs, well, 3 out of 4 limbs tied behind our heads and trying to do all kinds of contortions at the same time. So I can only applaud their dedication and ongoing optimism that we will come out the other side of the current constraints that we face and actually be able to deliver a decent public transport system. We have to maintain the faith that we can do this. It's too important not to, but I just want to just acknowledge their efforts and the angst that it must put them through to have to constantly go back to these plans and pull them in. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, councillors. Extremely supportive of the direction we're taking with this annual plan. I think we've done very well to recover from revenue and finance policy consequences for transport and also for Apatokitoki. So well done, team, for getting through that 2.0 version. Also to the great work that this team has put together for the consultation document. Nick, for finding us 4 million, that was your task at the start of this, but also seeking where we can utilise carbon credits, low value carbon credits, to help with a lot of our environmental mahi. So on that, I am happy to support this, and I've heard from everyone else, so it is on the table. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Kia ora. Thank you, team. Well done. We turn to annual freshwater science charges. So if I can please invite
You chair, it'll be
James.
James and Chris.
James, kia ora, James and Chris. think, James, this is your first time to council or been at a council
brief
meeting?
appearances before, but this
Correct.
is my first in the big chair, so to
Yes,
speak.
and would you like to lead us on this item? Thank you.
Kia ora, afternoon all. I hope the day's going well. Taking the paper as read, but for a little bit of background and refresher, through the RMA section 36, on an annual basis we charge freshwater science charges, and this is to recoup the costs that HBRC undertakes for the monitoring of water quality and water quantity for consent holders. This is really on a user pays basis, so it's not a profit-making enterprise for us, it's just to recover the costs. When this paper has come to council for the previous couple of years, post-Cyclone Gabrielle, a quantum of that work that we have done was diverted from the normal BAU monitoring into post-cyclone analysis and work. And so we have offered a discount and remittance to ratepayers for the 22-23 and then 23-24. For 24-25, the majority of that work has reverted back to business as usual, with the exception of the low flow compliance monitoring. So for this year, we have a lower cost incurred as part of that monitoring. The main driver for that is that we've improved our internal processes. So through a lot of the telemetry upgrades that we've been doing, this has meant that we don't have to send as many people out into the field, which is more costly and takes more time. We're able to do more remote monitoring internally, which has reduced the cost required to monitor those consents. So as such, we're forecasting to be around a $30,000 to $32,000 expenditure for the year, which is about a third of the proposed $100,000 budget based on the revenue and financing policy as set out for 24-25. So that was based on a consent fee cost of $250 per consent. We would like to remit that down to $85 per consent, which is a 66% reduction, as mentioned. This would ensure that we are covering our costs only. So while we will forego the revenue, we don't have the cost base incurred as a result. That's really the crux of it. Happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, James. Can we, as a council, focus our questions that relate to the recommendations, just so that we can get through this item quicker, please? Are there any questions of James? Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, James. Just a question on paragraph 17, second sentence. Any remaining balance would be covered by general funds. I take it, I mean, the overall quantum of what we're talking about is quite small anyway. There's a little bit of residual uncertainty, I suppose. So we're only talking a couple of thousand here or there, really. So we're not, not tens of thousands.
And we actually have a very small balance in surplus carried over from previous years. So we're actually in the good book so far.
Thank you.
And apologies, I would also just note we do have the ongoing recognition for the hardship applications embedded with this in this document as well.
Thank you. Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell us if you considered any implications for consultation in terms of changing a fees and charges regime which had been out for consultation?
Yes, so as part of, just for the low flow monitoring, we'll be reviewing the base charge of the 250 as part of the next LTP review for the revenue and financing policy.
I was probably meaning we're looking with the two choices in the recommendations. One is to follow the process used in the 2024-25 first year long-term plan. So that was consulted on as a part of the LTP. And then under 4, you're looking to charge to 4.1, 4.2, change the settings. What's the trigger for consultation on a change to those settings?
I think the key thing here is the significance of it, and also in the revenue and financing policy we do talk about the RMA being about recovering costs of that. So that is probably the overarching requirement within our revenue and financing policy that we've already got in there about covering costs. So if the costs are going to be less, we would decrease that. We don't need to consult on that because it's also not a significant change.
Just aware of the strife we got onto previously around this.
I guess the question is, do we have to consult?
What's the threshold? Have we examined it to make sure that it's below the threshold for consultation?
Yes. It is not a significant change. It is decreasing costs to the ratepayers. It is only covering costs, so the costs that we have incurred are decreasing as well. So there is no impact on general ratepayers or that across the country. There is no need to consult for that. It doesn't go past the significance of engagement threshold.
That is also explicitly spelt out in the Resource Management Act in section 36 as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, if we move to the recommendations, there's 1, 2, and I am going to propose 4. 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3.
Second.
Be happy to second. I don't think there's much reason to speak any further. Are there any other speakers? There are none. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you. Councillors, I just want to seek your approval to move a few items. We have indicated that the Wairoa Niwi projects would be 20 minutes ago. And we do have some visitors here for that item. With your acceptance, can we move that item forward to now, please? Sure.
Don't have the staff are expecting that to be at 5.
But we don't have the staff. Oh, we've got Simon online.
They're expecting that at 5 to 3. I can get them here from 2:30.
Oh, 5. I thought we were late.
No, we're early. The Crown Manager can be here from 2:30.
I'll just retract from that very quickly.
Simon's online.
I was looking at Leon. Go. He's having a moy in the corner. Okay, we're back on agenda item 8. Apologies for that. I see you laughing there, Mike.
Busy as well.
Yeah.
In the middle.
So we'd have Simon online.
Simon's online. Unfortunately, he couldn't travel today, so he's in Taupo online. So
Daughter Simon.
there he is. So really, Chair, this is just a continuation of our decision on the 18th of December, and then a workshop we had a month or so ago. So we've obviously got Desi here who'll do a bit of introduction, really the big piece around resilience for the region, and then we'll dive into the detail of the reimagining our 2 largest schemes, being Hevatonga and the Upper Tukituki scheme, and Louise and Simon will take you through that, and then hopefully we'll get a clear decision, and then we can move on and start delivering this project. So with that, I'll hand it over to Desiree.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you again. I've just got 1 or 2 slides, really just to feed back to you what we've heard from you already, is that this reimagining flood resilience project sits within a broader strategic framework of flooding, and that flooding is more than just river flooding, more than the stop bank breaching. It's a significant and increasing climate risk, and it's river, it's the river and stream management, river openings, as well as surface or stormwater drainage and coastal erosion and inundation. I've been tasked with developing, I think it's been referred to variously as a white paper, but we're sort of calling it a draft discussion document. The material that was used for Napier City Council's presentation last week was a bit of a pilot, so I've sat with the Napier councillors and heard their feedback and sort of working on the concept of a 10 to 15 page public discussion document. So it would be public facing. It would have a bit of a regional scale intro, which says, what is this about? Why is it important? Why now? Which would be the timeline between now and the LTP. And then the unique issues by area. So Wairoa, maybe Esk Whirinaki, Napier, Greater Hiratonga, and then Central Hawke's Bay. And looking at the current state, what is the current protection level, what do we pay in operating costs now, where is there a variation in the protection level, like Taradale Stockbank, and what a future state could potentially look like. Under a different protection level, what would that cost? And I'll be using existing information sources, and we will have some high-level comms support for that, so that just to make sure that it is public-facing. So aiming to have that done by the end of April. Yep, and you will be familiar with this slide by now. The only difference is that it has been colour-coded to be under these 3 buckets, or 3 PO, or 3 groupings. Blue being the NIWI-funded projects, the light blue being the small schemes or fundamentals, and 3 being the planning for the future. And the point of this slide really is to say, as you know, we've got a whole suite of resilience projects underway. They're in different locations and they're at different project phases. And this is a useful way of communicating that to the public, and we will be drawing on that in this discussion. And then, so that's the piece to try and position the reimagining flood work.
Awesome. Thanks, Desi. So the Reimagining Flood Resilience Project is a piece of that bigger resilience across the region vision, I suppose. It's an important project, and we've been in front of you a few times now to get the structure right, the decision right, so that we can start putting together the actual comms and engagement plan and start talking to people about the stakeholder groups and the steering groups and that sort of stuff. So we've had a few discussions since the report and the paper came to you in December, and we were at the workshop at the end of February, and today is really to get confirmation that where we've landed after all those discussions is the right place, and so that the project team can move forward. So this slide, you've seen it before, I won't go through it, but it's just to remind everybody that we're here, and this project is as a result of the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review and the recommendations that speak to this council, working with our partners, stakeholders and the wider community when we start looking for future flood resilience. This slide speaks to the engagement topics that we will go out and speak to stakeholder groups and focus groups around. What does flood resilience schemes need to deliver for our communities now and into the future? It is an intergenerational project. How do we balance the risks from flooding with affordability? And how do we manage the big events that are over-design events, such as Cyclone Gabriel? How will we manage those in the future to prevent the level of destruction that we saw 2 years ago? And how do we put nature-based solutions and making room for the river part of that project? Simon is going to hopefully speak to the next couple of slides about where we landed with the time frame and the design structure.
Thanks, Louise. Am I coming through clearly?
Yes. Yep.
Very good, thank you. So look, you've seen this before as well, but there's been a minor tweak to this in response to the feedback we had from our last workshop. And really that's around, you'll see phase 2 is now in 2 parts, and that's to bring the community socialisation component earlier. There was some desire to make sure that before the stakeholder reference groups are stood up, there is some effort to, socialise this project more broadly. And that socialisation will start before the reference groups and then go right through and carry on afterwards to make sure there's broad outreach and understanding about this work before the long-term plan preparation and consultation process starts. The timing for that's not changed. So it's just really a minor tweak to make that socialisation phase a bit longer and to start a bit earlier. Next slide, Louise, or who was driving, thank you. And this one, again, hasn't changed from our last workshop. We went through this in quite some detail last time, so I don't plan to talk too much about this, but certainly welcome any questions if there are any. And I suppose I'll just touch briefly on the resolution proposed today, where we are asking for you to nominate some members to sit on the 2 steering groups, the Heretaunga Plains steering group, where from last conversations there will be 2 to 3 HBRC councillors and 2 for the Upper Tukituki steering group. I just note that we obviously need to approach your partners to check their willingness to participate in the same structure. We've had some early conversations with all TAs, with certainly some good interest in the project, but there's been no formal invitation to be part of it in quite this way yet. So that'll be a key next step if this is adopted today. I think there's one more slide, Louise, which just shows the makeup of those groups, which we've been through before. So again, I won't touch too much on that, other than to note that there's been a few minor tweaks to this one, particularly from some feedback from TAs, where they were keen to see that the steering groups had, I guess, a clearer function, and that's where we've added a bullet point there around presenting recommendations to HBRC, and that sits against both steering groups, just to make it clear they had that formal role to present recommendations up to this council. That's it from me. Happy to go to questions or to hand back to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. So happy for some questions or discussion.
Thank you, team. I think I'll get the questions kicked off. In terms of the new phase, the phase 2A, community socialisation, when will we see a bit of a plan or have input into a plan on what socialisation actually looks like?
April, isn't it?
So from
I can.
So at its very basic, what we're asking for here is a decision so we can move the project forward. We have already been socialising in terms of talking to our PSGE partners and to our partner councils. So on one hand, that has already commenced, and I guess the team will work through the detail. Obviously, a lot of it sits under the work that Desiree will be doing. So again, that's a very tangible start to that work. I think we need to think through. We don't want to overload who we're providing that information to, because we know that we'll be having more detailed discussions. So that's probably at a very high level, but in terms of specific dates and planning, I'm not sure, Louise, if you've got.
And do you want to
more
speak
behind that?
to this, Simon, or do you want me to?
Oh, just to briefly note, for the benefit of councillors, so the project team are working behind the scenes on a much more detailed project plan right now, including how to resource all this. So obviously this plan calls for a significant number of meetings and engagements. We're working through now how best to resource that with a combination of internal and external resources, including, for example, some comms and engagement support for that socialisation phase. So there's a work in progress. We're keen to lock this in before we get too far down that track, but I'd expect in the next month or so, because we need to start really getting some details into this very soon to get the reference groups underway by July, that we'll have the information available for you to look at.
And to confirm, when you say put a budget together, that's from the existing budget against this project?
That's correct, yeah. So there's an existing allocation and the team are doing a resource plan, and obviously we will need to connect in heavily to the work that Desiree is doing, so we don't have any inefficiencies or talk past each other through different resources.
Great.
So that connection will be key.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Sears.
Thanks, kia ora. Thanks through you, Chair. I just, thanks very much. It's all really clear. It looks great. Just the work you're doing, Desiree, I'd really like to see the way that we can embed that into this project. I know it sits alongside it, above it, correct, but I just think within the recommendations it would be really nice, or within the paper, just to bring them together. Just because it's a lot of the work we're doing, we're often sort of seeing sitting separately in a way to coordinate that would be, it'd be quite a simple way, but what it would mean is, I think when we're out and the working groups are working in the stakeholder group or the steering group, we're working from that wider picture and being able to pick up the focus of that. So I'm sure someone clever can think of a way just to incorporate that into it.
Yeah, so they will need to be complementary and nested into one another, fully agree.
Yeah.
Excellent. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Just a question around the timeframes and processes around the stakeholder reference group. At the moment, you've got that running as a 6-month discrete exercise. One in practice ought that to bleed into phase 3 because you've got quite a long phase 3, and I think just the benefits of recognising to have that continuity and the feedback from the stakeholder reference group during particularly the plan preparation side of it. So have you given thought to feedback loops within that, with that stakeholder reference group? But that may then also, if you're going out and constituting that group, it might be better to have that in mind as you talk to them.
So these timeframes were drawn up based on feedback through the various workshops that we've had that we needed to be short and sharp. As we have worked out what the engagement will look like, and with 2 projects really running in parallel because we're splitting out Upper Tukituki and the Heratonga Plains, we're pretty confident that maybe for the Upper Tukituki we can do that within that 6-month time frame. The Heratonga Plains is going to be a lot more complex, and we are conscious that it may take us into 2026 and run up to June 2026. We don't see it pushing out the deadline. The deadline is the LTP, but realistically, with the complexity of the conversations and the complexity of the community that we will have to engage with, it's likely that it will push further than that, but we haven't got into the really detailed, till we've nailed down the steering group, the stakeholder groups and all that sort of stuff. It's hard to determine exactly what the time frame will look like. We need time between each meeting to get that feedback and to work for the next one.
Sure, that's not quite addressing the point that I was trying to make, which is that you need a bit of a feedback loop to rather than having a community consultation with the stakeholder reference group and then saying, that's it, we're going away, now we're going to design the solution and then come back to an implementation or to a formal consultation. Is if you round it back to that group periodically through that process, then you ought to end up with a better result.
Can we just leave that as a thought? A very good suggestion, because I know that after the Edgecombe floods and all the projects that came out of that, there was a feedback loop, but we probably just need to explore what that looks like when we get to that phase.
And I can briefly comment too that we obviously have a whole consultation process through the LTP, which is a fundamental feedback loop with the whole community. Mm-hmm. And I think it's clearly delineating here that the decision rights sit with this regional council, so we haven't morphed those groups into that decision-making time, and I think we'll continue to optimise it. So,
thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just pick up on that and ask a question to follow. I mean, I think the point, Councillor Harding, is that we need an answer from those groups early if we're going to load it into the long-term plan by July. You really need, and if you don't give them a sort of, as long as there's a deadline, doesn't mean you can't talk to them later, but as long as there's a deadline, that means by March you actually know what to lock into your long-term plan. I think that's really what it's about. Hey, but my question is, there's a timeline for the stakeholder reference groups, but there's not for the steering group. Is it the same?
It will be the same.
It's the same, so just assume that sort of same window there for the steering group.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, Councillor Sears, would you like to move our recommendations?
Yeah, I'd be happy to move. I've just as a suggestion, if we felt we would like something within the document around the 3 buckets or 3 poes, we could make a very simple addition around something like notes the project as a component of the 3 PO wider flood resilient document or something like that. What it would mean is, as things change and councils change, we're embedding the wider strategy above it. How would you feel about that, Chair?
I'm comfortable with that. That's sort of what has been communicated.
Yeah.
But we're asking our councillor members. So if you're proposing that as the sixth recommendation.
Yeah.
Maybe just do a quick bit of work to wordsmith it.
I'll send it to you now, Nick.
Chair, in the meantime, ought we to have a discussion about the names to fill in the boxes?
Oh, yes. Yep, we'll get to that. We'll just sort out what 6 looks like. Other way around so I can
So we're still going
do it backwards.
It's tricky on a golf club.
And we've still got to.
Yep, that's coming.
Okay, so the sixth one was
Yep, okay. So we've got some words for governance here.
Yeah, the chief's got them there.
Okay.
I'll just test this because I might not have got it entirely right. I'm
Alright.
just thinking of something that will carry longevity
Yes.
to another councillor. Notes the need to ensure that the strategic work on flooding, which is your big piece, is dovetailed with the project on scheme reviews.
It's dovetailed.
Aligned with the
Line.
It's aligned.
Is
line,
aligned.
might be a better word.
Fantastic. So mover is councillor Sears, seconder councillor Curtin.
Cheers.
Sorry, I'll take half a step back.
Yes.
We've got to appoint the councillors.
Yes.
So for the Upper Tukituki steering group, nominating councillor Foley and councillor Hokianga.
Right.
And appointing councillors Curtin, Van Beek and Sears to the Heretaunga Plains steering group. Yep. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Right. Would you like to speak any further?
No, thank you. Looking forward to next steps.
Councillor Curtin?
Sorry, Van Beek, Sears, and who was the third one?
Curtin. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, look, just some feedback from Napier. I almost want to sort of publicly apologise to them in a way, but we seized an opportunity that I think was too important to miss, to put stormwater, which was one of the words on the very first slide, into the conversation. Because I think as it affects Napier, stormwater is probably a more integral part of living with water, as opposed to just rivers, than in any other context. But I think in doing so, we queered the pitch and confused them. As to this question, the feedback very clearly was, so we've just done the whole presentation, and the first question we get is, so what's the project? Right, so if we've had a council of intelligent councillors sitting there after an hour saying, sorry, what's your project? We've got a problem, right, in project definition. And I think that was code for them saying, hey, is this about stormwater or is this about rivers? But we need to be very clear, the feedback that I think is true is to our market, which is the community and to our partners, exactly what is this and what isn't it? Because they weren't actually that keen to participate on the steering group until they knew that. So I just wanted to pass that feedback, and if we did overstay our welcome or were rowdy guests, apologise for that. But that was a really important conversation about stormwater that we had. But I think equally we need to own the feedback, be clear what it is we're asking people to participate in and what they're not being asked to participate in, so that they can decide whether to invest their time and resources in it accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers? Your Honour.
We have a second?
Yes. Yep. Mover and seconder.
It was a very quiet second.
All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you, team.
Didn't get called out.
Oh, it's a quiet-natured sort of person.
Shy and retiring.
It's very shy. Whitehall team still fighting this How long did she I'll invite the H-Brick team up. Kia ora. So thank you. We have Tom and Tracy. And Susie, are you joining them, Susie?
We'll see.
Quite comfortable.
You're chuckling in the middle of something really serious.
I think Susie needs to be there.
Welcome, team. We are on item 9, the draft HBRIC Statement of Intent for 25-26. Hand over to you, Tom.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Thanks for seeing us. Look, firstly, apologies from Chair Dan Druzianic. He'd normally be here, but he has a clash board meeting today, and so has opened up the opportunity for you as the shareholder of HBRIC to provide your feedback on the SOI for the next financial year, and we'll take this to the HBRIC's next board on the 14th of April. In terms of the evolution of the SOI, this document, this version of the document has tried to do a better job at capturing the broader mandate that Council has provided HBRIC, and so it actually technically goes beyond the bounds of a strictly HBRIC SOI, which would talk about HBRIC's only performance, and we've tried to introduce the language and some performance measures. So this document also does some heavy lifting around what you expect from your group investment assets, which includes investment assets that are held by regional council as well. So we tried to give that a flavour, so you'll sort of see that in a split performance table and things like that. So so that's just, I suppose, the evolution of this document. And I just want to note one little thing. Paragraph 5.8 of the cover paper. I've said that there's 2 meetings that HBRIC or HBRC has with Napier Port who've introduced. We've maintained that. We're already doing that. So scratch the word introduced, but take maintain. But look, I know you've got other people on a long agenda to get through, so I'm just happy to not take you through the document. I'm just happy to take any questions or feedback which I can take back to the board.
Okay.
And possibly invite any of the other directors if they want to make any comments.
I was just going there, you read my mind, Tom. I'll start with you, Councillor.
I've got nothing to start with.
Nothing? Councillor Curtin?
Just to comment, Madam Chair, thanks for all the work that's been done, Tom and Tracy. It's a long, slow process, and but now with the evolution of this document, we're sort of moving, I think, significantly moving forward compared to where we were 2 years ago. So thank you for that work. I think you've highlighted, Tom, the nature of the relationship between HBRIC and HBRC being probably significantly more than an arm's length relationship, given the oversight or the projected oversight of the group holdings. So a much more strategic partner than one might expect in normal circumstances, but I think an appropriate one given where we've come from and where we're going. So thank you for that. We'll look forward to the final. Is it June? When do we sign that out? June?
So we'll take this back. The feedback from this meeting will be provided to the HBRIC board meeting on the 14th of April, and then you'll change hats and you'll think about what the final version will be to come back to council for approval in June. Correct? Yeah.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I don't know why I did it, but I really didn't think I could approach this paper without comparing it with last year's statement of intent to understand the paragraph. And so I just had a couple of questions around what I've identified as the changes.
Yeah.
And one is on the mission, whereas now it says to optimise and grow the quantum and reliability.
Yeah.
Now, so just talk to me about that. So that's actually expanding the pie, not just the stability of the return. Is that the idea there?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and so that's certainly come back. I think from the feedback from council is that it wants to see consistent growth. It wants to see consistent growth in its dividend. It wants to see, protection of its assets, and it wants to rely on that because it's BRC has got a lot of work to do, and it's got its own long-term planning process. So we're probably just getting more specific around what it means to grow the long-term financial returns and introduce those concepts of quantum and reliability. And look, we could probably have added liquidity there, but I thought start here.
That's right. And the word optimal has turned up in the KPI table, as opposed to where it was previously for grow an investment for long-term commercial return. You've now really focused on optimal. Just talk to me a little bit about the intent behind that word.
I think with the again coming back to sort of the mandate and the moves you've made, and I think the the appointment of independent directors who have quite deep subject matter expertise in investment management. I think this is kind of reflecting probably more portfolio language, investment portfolio language, diversification. How do you in terms of if these are the outcomes that council are seeking in terms of returns, how do you optimise for that?
Yeah. All right. Finally, Chair, though there's a few others, but I noticed on the other side of this, what might have fallen off the table is for the KPIs for the group investment portfolio. There was a policy previously of promoting and supporting approaches to responsible investment that align capital with achieving a healthy, sustainable society, environment and economy, and that's now gone. Did it have to go?
Well, so under governance, we've got ensure group investment strategy, SIPO policies, and current and appropriate. It's generally in the SIPO that you'll see the most of, and I think recently we changed the SIPO to create the pathway so that we could do the managed funds RFP, and I think, remember we had a discussion at this council around that. And because you own the SIPO, because it impacts not only HBRIC's managed funds but HBRC's managed funds, you do that through, that's actually a process that you go through. Any changes to the SIPO have to be presented to you.
Yeah, but is that wording in the SIPO?
The whole ESG policies sit in the SIPO.
The whole ESG policy?
Yeah. So all those matters that you raised around. Yeah.
Okay. Is it our say as a council to approve the statement of intent, or are we just getting it for information?
You're providing us feedback.
This is feedback.
Well, I mean, I personally am disappointed to see a more express reference to responsible investment, which, I mean, appropriate can mean all sorts of things. Going from the KPIs, if there is a reason for it, explain that to me. Otherwise, I'd like to keep it there. That is my feedback.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Fantastic. Perfect. Councillor McIntosh.
I actually found the document quite helpful in explaining what you're about. And in doing it, you do, I mean, some of this is jargon, I suppose, but I did note references to optimising returns, reliability, diversification of portfolio, excellence and risk management. And, with particular respect to those last two, do you feel that the current setup is good in allowing you to achieve those things? Do you want me to rephrase that?
Yeah.
So we talk about optimising returns, reliability of returns, diversified portfolio, and excellence in risk management. So, with particular respect to those last two, are we well placed to achieve those?
Okay. It's a great question. Does the group have a well-diversified portfolio if you were a run-of-the-mill, if you were an ACC or a super fund and things like that? No, you don't. You don't have a diversified portfolio. 55% of your portfolio is sitting in a single asset, and so what are implications of not having that diversification. You probably don't have optimised returns and things like that. So that's so I think that's just a statement of investment fact. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. That's the situation you're in, and so the portfolio and the work that HBRIC does, and we do with with HBRC is try to manage around the current settings. But I think the question you're asking is, do you have a? So here's an example. I think I think Napier Port may represent something like, I've got this number, it's either 2% or 0.2% of the NZX market cap, and it represents 55% of your portfolio. Now, you manage funds, invest in New Zealand companies, but also invest across a global thing. So I think I've made my point, yeah.
Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Through you, I'd just like to make 2 points, sort of potential gaps in the document. One is, and I'll go to 6, para 6 on page 6, and at the bottom of that talks about a role in evaluating, developing and nurturing commercial opportunities as they arise. Look, I note, I mean, I think we're all vitally interested in what those opportunities might be. There's not currently any performance measure around that function, and it may simply be that we're not quite there yet, but it would be good. My first bit of feedback is it would be good to have as much clarity as possible about what our expectations can be, essentially for new business development. Because at the moment we don't have a clear sense about whether that's an active function at the moment. So that's my first piece.
Yep.
Shall I have a crack at that?
Yeah, have a crack.
Yeah, I mean, so there's certainly in terms of there's KPIs around annual review of current investments and things like that. And I suppose you'd say your only investment that really fits into that category at the moment is Food East, and so that's something we monitor and look at regularly. In terms of what is the pipeline being developed in terms of new opportunities, I think again we come back to this diversification issue in terms of councils. What are councils' priorities of objectives from HBRIC, and currently the objectives are which are represented in here. We want that cash dividend, and we want that to be reliable, and we want that to grow. We want you to protect the the capital value of your managed funds, and to the extent that there's money left over, we want to build up a resilience fund that can help achieve those things in leaner years. So,
thank you. Right. So my second point, and you can take it up at section 14 on page 11. Para 3 talks about HBRIC periodically reviewing its investments to ensure that continued ownership represents the best option for HBRIC and the council. And so, but we have an expectation, we have an understanding that the board of HBRIC is going through that process at the moment, but there's no performance measure in relation that I can see in relation to the totality of that review, and it's just wanted to just relay the clear expectation that stuff that as we sit here going to the end of a trimester, that is to have fulsome information on all our investment operations and understand what strategic means is important to be nailing for the end of this trimester for the newbies coming in.
Yeah, and happily I can say, sort of in anticipation of that question, your chief executive and chair have kind of pressed us to come back with a summary of the work that we've done to date, and I think we have presented along the way at corporate strategic and talked about some of the assets and where they sit and things like that. But yeah, where the need for a tidy up has been identified.
Just noting the gap. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, can I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Councillor Cruden and Councillor Foley.
Just very briefly, Madam Chair, I think the good thing that arises out of this exercise is that I think finally we're asking the right questions, that the shareholder is asking HBRIC the right questions around what is the shape of the investments, where are they, how they're performing, and at least we've got some tools now to, as shareholders, to ask those questions. So I'm pleased to see we're evolving this thing that far. So we'll just keep doing it.
Councillor Foley?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, team, for bringing this to council for feedback. Look, my only comment is around and look, agree with the document as it's laid out. Long-term thinking, though, is while we're doing everything we can to ensure more reliable, high yield from our investments, for some time now, the rates increases have been well over and above the yield on investments. So if that continues, the significance of the overall balance sheet and the income is going to reduce relative to rates. And so I just make that point for now and for future councils, because it's a path we've been on for quite some number of years. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Thank you both for bringing this to us and taking the feedback away, and we will see you next. When's our next meet?
You'll see me sooner than you want to.
Okay. Perfect answer. Thank you. All those who agree say aye. Aye. Those against, carry. We move on to item 10, the Wairoa project next steps. If I can please invite up, we've got Chris and Andrew and Lawrence, the Crown Manager for the Wairoa Flood Protection Project.
And Jess too.
And kia ora, Jess. Just to welcome you back, Lawrence. And for this item, we also have some guests who have been intimately involved in our partnership going forward. So just want to acknowledge Denise Eagleson, just online with us, and also Tātou o Te Wairoa Chair, Leon Symes. But essentially, Lawrence and the team, this is your time to present the paper. Yep. Thank you for bringing a refined version back from our last decision. This is just as critically important, this decision, and we acknowledge that we do have requirements with the Crown to bring forth a business plan, which is what today's decision item is about. We understand and would like to hear from you how the engagement has gone around the 1C plus spillway. And possibly our next steps forward in this project. So we'll just hand it over to you. Thank you, Lawrence.
Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Normally I'd say I'm sorry to bring an item back to you so quickly after you've considered it before, but this is a refinement which in our view is way better than 1C, and so we wanted to bring it to you. I've got a presentation somewhere.
Yeah, just plugging it.
We're getting it? Yep. Which I'll just quickly take you through. This is the same presentation that has been to the landowner group and on Saturday was given to Hui and Wairoa with affected Māori landowners. So it's the most up-to-date. Leon, can I acknowledge you being here? And I just want to welcome Hannah, who's been a critical part of the comms engagement of my team as well. So I'll get straight into it. Next slide, Jess. So this is sort of the agenda. I'm going to go quickly through it because many of you have seen this before. And then we're going to get to the comparison between 1C and 1C plus, which is in your papers. I see that, but today is really about just taking questions and sharing where we are, particularly on the Whenua Māori owner engagement and what we're going to do next. So Jess, next question, next one. So I think all the initial stuff on that slide we've had before, but if you go to the bottom slide, the bit that's highlighted, our focus has been to continue to try and find the best possible technical viable solution that minimises negative impacts on whānau, their land, homes
and protects marae, urupā and cultural taonga in the process. So when I last saw you, we'd come up with option 1C. It did cut through the corner of Takitumu marae, and it did have, and it was going to impact 16 homes, okay, and 7 hectares, I think, of whenua Māori land. Okay, next slide, Jess. So I'm not going to go through this. This is what we saw last time. It's just a history of the project. This was more about sharing with people on Wairua on Saturday. Next slide. So 1C, as we presented last time on the 13th of February, and you can see it on the map, it largely allows the water in an overflow event to flow where it's always flown. So that it's flowed down in that general path, and because it wasn't constrained, it's spread out and gone through all of North Clyde. So what we're seeking to do is manage the extra flow, and we're talking about 1,000 cubic metres or thereabouts per second. That's when the river has 6,000 cubic metres in a second. So we're taking about 15% of the water down through the spillway, and the rest will go around the river as planned. 1C was good in that it was generally in line with where the water has always gone, had fewer impacts on whenua Māori compared with 1D, for instance, was hydraulically efficient, had very few upstream effects, and it was good in terms of providing a high degree of flood protection for North Clyde, but it still impacted 16 homes. So while we're protecting 280 or more that are in category 2C, there are 16 people there were in 1C that were impacted. So on the day we made a change to the resolutions, you'll recall, to allow us to try and find a refined option. And HBRC and myself and the team we've got helping work really hard, really quickly to try and refine that. And today is about presenting where we've got to with that. Next slide, Jess. So we've got it, and I think it's fair to say, and it's never been something we've opposed, but we went through a sort of technical solution first, and then the next phase of that was how do we further refine that to minimise the impact on whenua Māori, whānau, homeowners and landowners, while simultaneously maintaining the integrity of what was in 1C. So instead of just looking at the engineering, we then say, oh, well, here's the engineering here. What can we do to minimise the impact on homes and land? And that work has been done at pace. When we first come up, it looked at 1C plus. There was a little bit of, I'm not sure this is going to work, you sure, all the rest of it. So we've done a whole lot of things, modelled, remodelled, have to move out to get it wide enough, things like that. But we now do have a 1C plus model that works. It is very similar to 1C. It's very close to the most direct overland path, similar levels of secondary mitigation works on the other side of the river, similar construction costs, but it significantly reduces the impact on whenua Māori and houses, and obviously it's still subject to the final decision today. Next one, Jess. So the difference between 1C plus and 1C is 1C plus goes to the southern side of Takitumu marae. 1C went to the northern side, okay? So it is generally a spillway of similar dimensions. The area above Ruataniwha Road, which is the road on the angle leading up at the top of the river, that has hardly changed. But the area from Ruataniwha Road to the river, re-entry in the river, has dramatically changed. It is of similar dimensions, 2 metres deep, about 170 to 190 metres wide, 1.2 to 1.5 metre stop banks, although they taper out to virtually nothing by you get to back into the river. We've modelled and remodelled and checked, and the velocities are compliant with a grass covered spillway, so we don't expect to have to put concrete and other things because the velocities are less than 3 metres a second. So that's it in a nutshell physically, if you look at it on a map. Next slide. Yep.
But the first two parts of this really tell the story of the difference it makes. So instead of impacting 16 homes, it now impacts 8. And of those 8, one of those homes is already demolished and the other one is not lived in and is waiting to be demolished. So there are only 6 homes now, of which people actually currently occupy on a permanent basis or on a temporary basis. And the amount of whenua Māori has reduced from 6 hectares to 2, but there has been a corresponding increase on impact on general land. But that corresponding impact on general land is on land where we have a willing seller at this point. Okay, so that is quite a big step in the right direction. Not much change to the area of whenua Māori land protection is a bit better, and general land is very similar. So this is indicative only, we're still tweaking it, but you can see that it makes quite a big difference. So what we've done up until now, we have told the people in 1C that they're no longer required and we're likely to pursue 1C plus, subject to your agreement today. The general view of that was elation from those people. That's the general view. There was some people that were hoping that they would be bought out because they would be being bought out at pre-Gabriel levels, which is a higher value than what they'd get now. So there's a few, but most people were thrilled to hear. Unfortunately, though, there is some new land we've had to bring in that haven't been part of this at all, and they've only had 2 weeks to know that they're part of it. There are 2 houses currently lived in that are part of that, and there is another house that is not currently lived in that's part of it. So while we've made a big difference, we have started to impact some new people which have never been impacted before. So that is very challenging for them. But we have started that process, pretty difficult conversation, tears, all those sorts of things, as you'd imagine. But I'm confident we're approaching it the right way, and we'll continue those discussions. Next one, Jess. Yep. We've also, since we last met, begun the whenua Māori owner engagement, and we have been directly engaging with whenua Māori owners that may be affected by the footprint of the project. We started on 1C, but we've now quickly moved to 1C plus. We held a first judicial conference, which was held by the Maori Land Court in Wairau on the 27th of February. That was successful. The judge sort of stamped his mark on how things, and took a lot of questions on how things would work. It was really only an initial thing, no decisions were made. It was just formalising the start of the process. And then we had our first hui of potentially impacted whenua Māori owners at Care 2 on Saturday. Largely they were 1C landowners, 1C plus landowners, sorry. And once again, that is about explaining to them what we've done, how we've got to where we are, and there will be further hui ongoing with impacted whenua Māori landowners, and there'll be further judicial conferences and hearing held by the Maori Land Court. There is still a number of whenua Māori owners with unknown details, and that last comment was really for people at the meeting on Saturday. I think that's it. No next steps. Okay, further cultural assessment activity is now underway. So 1C plus, there has been a lot of cultural assessment done on 1C and 1D, but 1C plus, the area there where we don't know as much about as we should is where the bottom of the spillway enters the river again, at the area south of the Takitimu Urupa. So our deliberate decision has to be to avoid the Urupa, which is all part of our strategy and our rules from the start. But there is some land that is south of the Urupa that has got a stream in it that we need to understand the significance of that, whether in fact there are any bodies buried in there from the Spanish flu and other things. There's quite a significant amount of cultural work that has to be done at that point. The PDP was submitted to the Crown, conditional on
this meeting today, but it was submitted on Friday of last week, which was a requirement of the government to done. So great work by the team to get that all put together, and I'm happy to support it, and Wairau District was, and we're confident in the material that's in that. And obviously today's meeting, we will continue to have direct engagement with particularly impacted whānau homeowners, and that's ongoing. Just on the whenua Māori land, one of the other benefits of 1C plus is the land is generally more tightly held. So we have, of the 7 blocks, most of them are held by less than 10 owners. So we don't need, we need the agreement of the Maori Land Court, but we don't need a big process with 130 owners and things like that. That's not to say there aren't challenges with a couple of blocks. One is in the control of the Maori trustee. Another one two haven't had succession. And so there's things to be done, but it is in 1C, when we looked at that, there was a number of blocks that had hundreds of owners. And actually getting agreement and working it through is more complex, whereas in 1C plus, they're generally more tightly held. This week, the stop bank on the other side, or the ski club side of the river, is being surveyed, and we expect to have more data and working out how we're going to deal with whatever flood protection is needed on the other side. There does need to be flood protection on the other side. It's just the makeup of it, the location of it, whether it's a stop bank, whether it's a wall, whether it's sheet piling, all that needs to be worked out. And we're about to have conversations once we know that with the landowners. We've had initial ones, but we'll have more. There will be a more general community hui in April at some point. It's likely to be broader in terms of the long-term solutions around the bar and other things like that. But the communication is ongoing. Generally, what I'm getting a sense from in Wairau now is just get on and do it. It's not universal. There's some people that but generally that's what I pick up when people talk to me. It's sort of time's up for talking. We need to actually get something done. So that's it, I think, Jess. Is that right? Can I just say that it may not be obvious to you. If you just go to the map, I just want to show you, and you won't be able to see this, but this is Maori land in here, okay? This is, for those of you who know, Kitty is whānau, all his family, CEO of the Regional District Council. This is Lambert land in here. We tried to avoid this. We tried to avoid this land because it's Maori land, but to do that we had to narrow the spillway to this point here. We modelled and remodelled, and the problem was because we made it narrow, we had to make it deeper, and we were getting velocities of 5 metres a second, which would encourage erosion, and we'd have to concrete line things, we had to do all sorts of. So we had to make a call, because the Irapa is right here, so we couldn't go north. We had to make a call to come south. And that's where the new people are, in here, that are being impacted. And as you say, this is new to them. People over here that are 1C, they've been discussing this for months. These people here, 2 weeks. And so it's been quite they've actually been very good, to be fair, but it is quite they thought they were out of it, weren't going to be involved, and all of a sudden there's a change. Okay. Right, any questions? That's it, pretty much. Andrew, unless you want to add anything?
Would you like to add anything, Andrew?
The only thing that I'd add is that obviously with the work that we've had to do over the last 6 weeks, we haven't had quite as much robust concept design work done on this option, because that effort went into 1C, but we've been able to extrapolate a lot of the work that was done, given that the profiles, as Lawrence has explained, are very similar, around stop ranking, digging down, town side of the river needing to be protected, etc. So all we've had to do is just increase lengths, and in a few areas we are looking at structures that aren't just stop banks to make sure that we can occupy a smaller footprint. That means that we're not encroaching on properties as we can avoid that. And so we are looking more at flood walls, but that's actually a feature of our design that's starting to evolve on all of our projects, because large footprints have significant impacts on a number of fronts. So Wairal's just actually following what's happening on other projects. So just the comment I'd make then around the cost build-up, we've reassessed what we think are estimated costs for land access. We've reassessed what we believe are the engineering aspects of the design, as Lawrence has outlined, again, built that up, and we are within the same funding envelope of the 60 million at a very similar number to what we had with 1C, just a slightly different makeup between actual hard engineering requirements and the land access costs. But the key thing that I wanted to convey to you is that we are still in the same envelope as we were, with very similar contingencies as we go forward with the design, on the assumption that you adopt the 1C plus option, and likewise the government adopts the PDP that is in and subject to your agreement today.
And the other thing I'd say, just at a high level, around 90%, maybe higher, of this land in 1C plus is general title land. So in terms of access, and we have a lot of, at this stage anyway, willing sellers, subject to the commercial terms. So it's quite a good place to be in, but we still have land access issues, particularly around whenua Māori. It's not to say the answer's no, it's just there's succession, there's a whole lot of things we have to work through. But I think most people are generally of agreement that actually reducing the impact from 6 hectares to 2 and reducing the number of houses from 16 to 8 is a good thing to do. We have a Crown appointed peer reviewer that has been appointed to peer review all the modelling. He has checked the modelling along this. He has confirmed that 1C plus works hydraulically. So that's another useful thing to know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'll open up for questions. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, look, just a hydraulic question. I'm going to stay away from the important issue of landowner access, because I understand how sensitive and challenging that is for everyone involved. But I'm just interested in, it doesn't mean I don't care about it, I just want to focus on the question on the fact that it's a straighter line. Does that mean it's a better sort of thrower of water at Wairoa Township? Is it coming at the town in a more direct and higher velocity way? Has that got implications on the southern bank?
No, it is a better flow of water, to use your terms. In fact, it's slightly too good at that, which is one of the things we've had to manage in terms of the slope and the spill height at the top end. The one thing though that you can't probably see here, which is different, is that the land from the river to about this point is already flooded when the river's in flood.
Right.
Okay? So the river's already right up here anyway. So when you have a mixing, you have a much wider part of the river that you're mixing the water in. And the view is that the mixing will not go more than halfway across the other side.
Interesting.
And the impacts of erosion and stream in here is more likely to have come from other more frequent events than these 1 in 40 year things and this. And over this side, you will see there's erosion along, you can't see it on this map, but there's erosion there, but it's quite obvious when you go and have a look where the trees are, and there's willows and there's not erosion. Where people have taken the trees out to have a view of the river, there is erosion. So it's a bit of a balance. You live next to a river here, you'd want to look at it. But the downside of that is it takes some of the natural protection on the edge away.
You'd still be proposing those stop banks along that?
Yeah, well, some sort of structure will come along from here right up around here, and probably end up. Well, it's yet to be determined in here somewhere. But this is people's front lawns, and swimming pools, there's all sorts of things. So what the stop bank protection might be could be building up lawns. It could be hard wooden walls. We don't know yet. And what Andrew said is we're probably going to have to change the previous thinking about a normal stop bank and its width to some other models.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Based on that, Lawrence, how is that factored into the costs?
It's in there.
Financial.
It's in there.
It's in there. So there's a range.
Yeah,
There's
so
a range of
basi-
solutions in that.
So what we've done, the land access is generally going to be less because there is less houses involved. But some of the secondary works might be slightly more. So it's sort of balanced out within the 70 million, we believe.
Councillor McIntosh.
Just explain that. So where it gets close to the river, it floods anyway?
Yes.
And the stop banks at that level are?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So actually, why do we need that land? Because it sort of happens there anyway.
Well, it's a good question. I think you'd probably argue that you are creating a new flow of water into that land at that point, and you would need the owner's permission somehow to be able to do that. It floods in an event anyway, but you're making it part of a deliberate piece of water. This land here, generally, apart from the Murray land, which is down this side, this land is all general title. There's a little bit of Takituma Urupa, it's all general title, of which currently appears to be a willing seller. So, yeah.
So is the summation of that, it probably doesn't make a hell of a lot of difference to the Māori land that's affected.
No.
But notwithstanding that, we need to do it because of the reasons you mentioned.
Yeah.
We need to purchase that land.
Well, it's easement.
Easement or that land may be purchased. The challenge is the Māori land on the, there's two houses there.
Yeah.
One of the houses anyway, it's 5 generations have lived in that house.
Yeah.
So we've done everything we can to avoid those houses.
Okay.
But we can't and come up with a hydraulic model that works. So now we're having discussions about could we move those houses, things like that.
Yeah, and I want to stress my question is not to dilute the importance, the impact of it on those people. I just wanted to understand that there was in fact an impact over and above what naturally happens.
Yep.
But nevertheless, so also that is the absolute crux of it, that area. And the alternative, as you suggested, is to narrow the gap there, but it has a velocity issue. So that's been quite a tight time frame in which you've had to look at that. And are you sure that, if there's someone in Holland who's done this stuff to death and has good solutions to slowing down water that we might not know about here?
Yes, I think the challenge though is that we've tried to go with what I call nature-based solutions, which is grass and spillways. If we get into concrete designs and all the rest of it, then we're actually going to run into a really culturally significant area down there. So this area down here, all through here, is really culturally significant. So the best thing we could do is to leave it alone. If we can, it's just, it floods now. We don't want to be digging it up. We don't want to be putting concrete over it. We don't want to really. That's what we're trying to do. It's not to say, Councillor McIntosh, that we couldn't, put some structures in here. You just add dramatic expense though, dramatic expense.
I had a look at that area with Lawrence last week when I was up there for one of the hui at the marae, and I think we're actually very fortunate with this profile of the alignment that it does drop as it does there, because as Lawrence said, it dissipates the velocities as it mixes with the normal flow of the river, and the other one is, it's doing a whole lot of things that we wouldn't have to do, or we don't have to dig there for a start, and as Lawrence said, we can't dig there. It's a no-go area. We know that, so it's been a balance between those things, and the only reason, as Lawrence said, that we had to widen it there, where we've got into this issue about more whenua Māori land, is just the sheer velocities that a narrower floodway represented.
Councillor Roadley.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, team. Outstanding to see these refinements come to fruition. The reduced impacts on property owners, whenua Māori, the increased protection that's provided. Really pleased to see this come forward. fantastic to hear that those conversations continue. The process continues. We're not at the end of any road as such. We're just getting through the next gate, so that's neat to hear. Those new, just where you were pointing to the new Māori land parcels at the bottom there, yeah, right there, thanks Jess. You talked about needing it to be wider due to that scouring. Is the scouring wanting to be avoided for the ongoing structure of the spillway, or is it wanting to be avoided due to the cultural sensitivities of that under the ground?
For both of those, but also the third one is we don't want to do anything that creates a major scouring issue on the edge of the river and does something to the actual river itself. So that whole area has flooded before. The water was up to the top, to the floorboards of the houses. Those two houses I'm talking about, they had to be evacuated by helicopter.
I mean, in from under though, not coming overland.
Yeah, and it was coming overland. No, what I'm talking about, when it drops down, because this is lower, and if we made this narrower here, the velocity is so high that you won't know till after it happened how much the scouring could be, but it could be significant. And so the engineers would say we'd have to hard engineer this in here, and it's very expensive. And equally, this is really sensitive culturally, so our aim was to leave it alone. That was our thinking. So it's a bit of a balance of everything. And for those landowners, I've had to explain that to them. But I just wanted you to be aware we have tried where we could to avoid those blocks of land.
Yeah, it's a bitter pill for those whānau who thought they were going to be spectators to this process and are now find themselves literally eyeball deep in it. And yeah, certainly our aroha goes to them.
Well done, team, for bringing us back this refined version. I think it is very positive. But it has meant that there has been less time to engage with new owners impacted, which also means there's been less time to understand possible new cultural areas that will be impacted. So you've talked about one urupā, and then you have a second urupā that I am presuming you have the same design principles around the possible discovery around the urupā. So can you just confirm that the design principles will be building on top of and not so much digging into?
Correct.
Yes.
So the design principles, well, first of all, and I'm happy to say this in front of Leon, who's the chair of Tātou Tātou, is that what we're trying to do is understand what is the cultural significance of what and where it is, and can we find solutions to avoid in the first instance or mitigate what that is. So there will be some work about to be undertaken that by the Regional Council looking at ground penetrating radar at the lower edges to see what is there. But I'm also aware there's a stream, an underground stream that's culturally significant there. Always our aim is to avoid when we know about it, but what we need to do is know about it. And so what I'm asking for is as much information can be supplied from as many sources as possible so we actually can work through to understand what we're dealing with. In terms of the other urupā further to the north, the same thing applies. Further to the west, sorry, the same thing applies. Our aim is to avoid, protect, enhance. It is not to cause any damage but once again, on that urupā, if there is cultural significant land between the current urupā and the river, we need to understand that. And at the moment, I have no particular knowledge of that. It's not to say somebody doesn't, but I don't.
And so I'm just asking that we can get as much information put on the table in the spirit of trying to understand it so we can avoid or mitigate it.
And just to follow on, sorry, I will come around the table. I am concerned about the new Māori land blocks. They're involved in 1C+, and what support systems there are for them to navigate, particularly through the Māori land court process, and if you can talk to that briefly, to ensure that they've had timely engagement and also time to make a fair decision on through negotiations.
Correct. So the Regional Council has employed a lawyer who is vastly experienced in dealing with the Maori Land Court. His role generally is to support the process of succession or understanding. It is the intention that landowners will also be entitled to their own legal advice and other support mechanisms. It's a complex thing. We are trying to explain why we need to use these pieces of land. We're not trying to alienate the land. So in other words, ownership will be retained. It'll be an easement. And where there are houses involved, we will seek to move those houses should they wish to retain the houses. That is a sensitive process which I'll continue to be involved in. And along with Glenn, who is the Maori Land Court law, and other people, property specialists, they need to be supported. It's very raw at the moment, 2 weeks in. But I'd have to say, despite that rawness, the response I've received so far is they sort of get it. They don't like it, but they sort of get it. And it's about what does this mean, what next, so yeah. So no stone is going to be unturned trying to find a solution that can get them to support this. Yep.
I'll go to Mike. Kia ora, Mike.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. I do note Denise's hand's been up a lot longer than mine. If we go to Denise, you might even answer my question for him.
We're having trouble hearing you, Mike. Either speak up loudly or... Yeah.
Apologies. I was just saying Denise did have her hand up for quite some time. But I'm happy to ask my questions. It is a question to yourself, Lawrence. I think you've kind of answered it. Are you hearing me all right?
Yes.
It's in regards to, so you've spoken about the technical reports, the engineers, the hydrologists, et cetera, and you did talk about wanting more information, as much information as possible. So have we asked, the locals who have that thousands of years, that 1,000 year of knowledge, that mātauranga, what their opinions are of shifting from 1C to 1C plus? So going from the north to the southern end of Takitimu Marae.
So, yes, we have, and we're continuing that process. So we have met with the trustees, or I have met with the trustees of Takitimu Marae. I have visited the site 3 times now, walked over it, understood it. But what I'm saying, I suppose, is we're very open to hearing other information because if we don't know, we can't understand what we're dealing with. So, Mike, and short, yes, and we'd encourage more of that. What we're trying to do here, Andrew and I, and all the team that's supporting organisations, is try and find a solution. We can't find a solution if we don't understand what we're dealing with, and that's the sense of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Lawrence, and the team. Consenting pathway. Paper notes that this is more challenging. Can you add anything to the brief in there, which basically says
I'm mindful this is a public meeting and some decisions will have to be made on this at some point, but there currently exists an order in council for 1C. It does not apply to 1C plus because it's substantially different.
So the path that needs to be chosen is yet to be determined. I mean, I have a preference, but that's a regional council decision as to how we should do it. But we are going to have to work on a consenting pathway. Yep, there is a consenting pathway. I actually think the consenting pathway is easier now we've reduced the number of homes in whenua Māori land, but it's still a consenting pathway that's required.
And assumptions about a consenting pathway are factored into the budget now.
Yep, they are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to add any further, Matt?
Just to add to that through you, Chair, that we're actively working with officials at MFE, the Cyclone Recovery Unit, and via the RRA locally as to what the best way through a consenting process will be, and happy to come back to council once we're close to identifying what the most appropriate way is.
Councillor Hokianga, kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Tēnā koe, Lawrence. Hey, this question is probably centred around... Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
yep.
we can.
This question is centred around the cultural impact assessment or a communication tool of sorts that kind of leans into what Papa Mike was talking about, that the historical knowledge on the land. Now, I understand that there's been some CIA done in the past, and probably one that's live at the moment. Is the one that's live at the moment, and correct me if I've got the wrong definition for it, is it kind of isolated to the area that's being proposed for the spillway?
So, no, the one that Piripi Winiata did for 1C did not specifically cover the lower area of 1C plus, as I understand it. So that's now being reviewed, that part of it. So that's a process we're following. Tiwa. Yeah.
And Te Wairam is here to help answer that. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, councillors, tēnā koe, Councillor Hokianga. At this stage, Hawke's Bay Regional Council has been in conversation with Tātou Tātou Te Wairo around navigating a process for securing a further cultural impact assessment or an addendum to the cultural impact assessment that has been delivered to ensure that it covers the area that has been identified in option 1C+.
Okay. Good enough.
If there are no further questions, councillors, fantastic. We will head to our recommendations. And 1 and 2, very self-explanatory. Recommendations 3 rescinds the 13th of February resolutions 5 and 6 and replaces them with adopts option 1C+ as the preferred option for flood mitigation for the Category 2C area of Wairoa, as it provides the best possible mitigation within budget and minimising impacts on whenua Māori, whānau home and landowners where possible. It also directs the project team to complete a project development plan for submission to the Crown based on the option 1C+, with sufficient scope for option refinement to minimise the impacts on whenua Māori. Can I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Roadley. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Harding. Councillor Roadley, would you like to speak?
I think we've covered it all, really. It's fantastic paper, great work's been done, and we look forward to the next steps as we move through the project. So, yeah, big thank you to your team and the crew. So, thank you.
Councillor Harding. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, look, I don't wish to speak substantively. It's almost a procedural issue. Item 2 says agrees that the decisions to be made are not significant. And they are. But the fact is it's in our long-term plan, we've engaged extensively, and what the equivalent recommendation last time was, it agrees that given the nature of the significance and reflecting on community engagement to date, we have sufficient understanding of the views and preferences, and it's also included as a project in our long-term plan. I'm not going to make a big fuss about it, but I just think that that's possibly unsafe as a resolution, and something should be done
I'll
about it.
ask Nick to make comment on that, given that it was a significant item, but these recommendations rescind two of the last, add in what we've asked for in terms of refinement in the last resolution. So Nick, if I can get you to comment on whether it is actually legal recommendation two as it sits.
My view is yes, it is, Chair. The previous decisions of council were significant. This is essentially refining that process. And I understand the team has gone back to Simpson Grierson to do a check on that to make sure that we are doing a legal process.
Legally, it is correct, but I think the point that you make, Martin, is these decisions are very significant to the communities.
Yes, and it doesn't sit well with paragraphs 29, 30 and 31, which go on about how significant the decision is.
I wonder if that could be dealt with by council noting that I won't go to a recommendation so much as I think what I understand is anything like this is significant to the people affected and the people of Wairoa. Whether that trips of the formal significance and engagement policy is kind of a different thing. So I wonder if there's something in here where council notes the significant impact on those people who are now affected by 1C plus, or records their you're trying to acknowledge that really in the process.
I think it's self-explanatory. We've talked about it. It'll be noted already in the minutes. And I guess we have had reassurance that a legal check has been done on that, so we have to take that advice.
We add in there also that there is significant engagement one-on-one with impacted whānau. It's not that the engagement isn't happening and it's continuing.
I've got a further suggestion, Chair, if it helps.
What? Go ahead.
So we could just make a further note, like you say, formally around the assessment of significance in the 13th of February paper.
Yeah.
I've got some wording that we can use for that, including the description of the extensive community engagement undertaken by the project team to date, and the fact that there's ongoing engagement in progressing that in relation to the project. The suggested resolution or recommendation 2 would be, do you want me to read it out in
Yes,
full?
please.
Agrees that given the background to the decisions to be made, they are not of themselves significant when considered against the criteria contained in Council's adopted significance and engagement policy, and that based on the existing community engagement, Council has a good understanding of the views and preferences of those within the community that are affected or likely to have an interest in the decision.
Thank you. I was going to say, it's not significant in the context of the previous decision, so
yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to check with our mover and seconder that you are happy to accept that change to 2. Thank you. Councillor Curtin.
Just commenting on the level, the significance, the criteria for significance covers off a wide range of issues, not only the impact on the individuals concerned, but is it consistent with a long-term plan, previous decisions, etc. So it has a broader context than simply impact on the individual.
Charlie, kia ora, Councillor Lambert. We're in deliberations.
Yeah, kia ora. I'm just noting the difference between the last motion we had at the last meeting was about availability of access to mined land as well. And this one is more about minimising impact on mining land.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a significant change? Or so I noticed we want to try everything, we leave no stone unturned, and now we're into just minimising impact on mining land. Is there a difference here at all or not?
I guess we asked the team to go and refine the 1C option, and they've come back with a solution that does minimise, so it's reflected in the resolutions, that's the result of the refinement. But in the paper, Charlie, it does mention what those changes are, including the other positive changes, not just the Māori land minimisation.
Could I also add, Chair, that we're not rescinding number 7 of that, which is where that wording sits, so that still remains?
Yeah, it does still remain. So it's only 5 and 6 that we're rescinding and replacing, Charlie.
It still stays there.
There's no further comment around the significance of this project, which it is greatly. That is on the table. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Thank you, team.
More information
Kia ora. Thank you, Leon, for joining us. Ka kite.
Yeah. Is it going around the room? That's great. Won't be much left of it. We've got the
Team, we have 2 options now. We can break for afternoon tea, or we can head straight into public excluded. What would you prefer?
I'd like to break, please.
Break. 5 minutes sufficient?
Yes, please.
You're like, no.
No, I can't. I need to have 15 minutes. I need to get out of this room for 15 minutes. I don't want to go home sick. So
Okay, 15's fine.
if you all want to
15
start in 5 minutes,
No.
I'll be 10 minutes
That's right,
late.
15 minutes.
So that means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So,
Before the break.
excellent. So we want to pass the resolution, but moving
When we
into-
come back.
Oh, well, we should do that now.
We
Yeah,
can't
that
close
was
it.
all. Okay,
We
let's go.
can't close
It
it
does- it
because we
doesn't
have to
really
do public
matter.
exclude, come back and close the meeting, don't we?
Because